Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk about our monetary system, and basically what I want to explain is how money is created, okay, why it has any value. And to do this, I'm going to basically go way back, kind of to the beginning, and picture a situation where you have a gold mine, right? And you mine 10 pounds of gold, and basically you bring it, you want to store it somewhere, so you bring it over to a depository or a bank, okay? And you put the 10 pounds of gold on deposit with the bank, and what they do is they give you a receipt for the 10 pounds of gold that you just deposited with them. In fact, what they do is they give you 10 little receipts, for a pound each, okay? So you got 10 little pieces, 1 pound each, totaling up to the 10 pounds of gold that you just deposited with this depository. So so now you go home and basically you see that your roof needs fixing, okay? So you call your neighbor, he fixes your roof, and now you gotta pay him, okay? So what you decide to do is the way you're gonna pay him, right, is that you're gonna give him one of those little receipts, for 1 pound of gold, in payment for the roof that he just fixed. So basically, by giving it to him, he's now, basically, he can now go to the depository and pull out that 1 pound of gold, and now you only have 9 pounds remaining for yourself. Now, let's say the next day you need something else done, right? You need your house painted. You call another guy. He paints your house. You give him a receipt. So now he's got a receipt for 1 pound of gold. Okay. None of these people ever actually mined the gold. Okay. You're the one that mined it. But now each of them have possession of a pound of gold each. Okay. Now the way this can also work is it doesn't have to be just gold. I use gold because I think that it's a concept that people tend to feel more comfortable with because they associate some type of value with that. But in reality, there's other commodities that often are used. In the part of Europe where my family originates from, the commodity was olive oil. Okay, so basically every fall, basically the people would collect the olives. Add the olives, they would get the olive oil, and basically they put them into barrels. And those barrels would, actually, they wouldn't, they didn't actually go into little barrels, but the oil would end up going to a depository, and it went into these, giant containers, maybe 10, 20, 30,000, liter tanks. I'm going to say liters because that's what they use over there. And basically, this depository would keep track of how much oil everybody had deposited. Okay, so it was not uncommon at the time, and we're going back some 50 years now. I mean, obviously, I wasn't. This is way before my time. We're talking my father's and my grandfather's generation here. If somebody wanted to buy a tractor, right, from somebody else, one of the things that they could do, the way they could pay for it, is that they would contact the depository and they would say, "Hey, I want you to transfer 500 liters of oil from my name into this other person's name." Okay, so as recently as the last 100 years, this was a real method of commerce that people did. They would actually transfer the ownership of these assets. Okay, so let's bring that forward into what's actually happening today in the world that most of you guys live in. Okay. You guys are actually also in a position of creating money, and you do this quite regularly without realizing it. What you guys do is you basically put up assets like your houses and your cars. Okay, when you go to if you have a house, right, and let's say that you own the house outright, if you go to get a credit line on that house, right, the bank basically takes the deed. They take this. They take this asset. Now, they don't physically put it in their vault, but they take the deed, okay, or the title, or they put themselves on the title that's stored, that's on record, and basically they basically take ownership of this asset, your house. And what the bank actually does is they create money. Okay, the money did not exist prior to this point. They're creating new money, and the banking rules allow them to do this. And this is no different than the guys, at that oil depository. The way that they were creating receipts for these for the additional oil that they might receive. Well, the bank, every time they receive assets, whether it's a house or whether you're buying a car, or whatever, anytime they take title to something, they are able to create money. They go on the computer, they hit a couple of X a couple of boxes, and fill in some blanks, and the bank actually creates money that did not exist before. Okay, and that money is backed by assets. Now the funny thing is, a lot of times people will say, we should go back to the gold standard. Okay, because they think that was that money was actually backed by something. Well, the money that we have today is actually backed by something even more valuable. The houses that we live in, and the cars that we drive, and the equipment that we work with. Okay, that's what's put up as collateral. The problem with the gold standard is that very few people were in a position to have those assets. So the few people that owned the gold mines, they were really in a position to really manipulate the market. So that's why we wanted to get away from the gold standard as quickly as possible, and move to something else, some other asset that everybody had access to, and everybody's able to create money. Okay, so let's take this now to the next step. Okay, so we're able to create these assets, and basically, when we create the assets, the bank or the lending institution, they're hold titled. Okay, and as they are paid back or given back receipts, those ownership receipts, however you want to look at this, basically that's how you pay things down. Now the interesting thing here is that the government is actually a part of the system. Now, they're not supposed to be outside of the system, okay, because that's where they try to put themselves. They're supposed to be in the system. So the same way that you create money by putting up real assets, the government should be doing exactly the same thing. If the government wants to borrow money, they should have to put up real assets as collateral in order to create money. Okay. Now, the way it actually works is the government, instead of putting up assets, they issue debt. Okay, they issue the treasury bills and the notes and the bonds, the government bonds. So they're actually issuing debt. Basically, it's a promise to pay for money. Okay, and that would all be fine if they were off in their own little universe, and if they had their own separate monetary system. That wouldn't bother us. The reason why it does bother us is because they're actually in the same monetary system as we are. So you have to put up real assets in order to create money, whereas the government can just put up debt to create money. And there's really no limit to how much money that the government can create. And what that does is that has the effect of diluting your money. Okay, because here you are, you're doing business every day. You think your money is worth a certain amount because you think that, well, here I have a house. I put I took out a line of credit on my house for $100,000. The bank is holding on to that. My house is actually worth $100,000, or rather, this money that I have is equal to my house. Okay, because that's the asset that I put up. And then here comes the government, and they're basically, because they're able to easily create money just based on these on debt that they're putting up. They're able to flood the system with so much money that all of a sudden the value of your money becomes less and less and less. Okay, and what that really is, it's a tax. Okay, because by the government, unfairly creating money. And dumping it into the system, what that's doing is it's decreasing the value of your money. And anytime the government is decreasing the buying power of your money, basically they're taxing you. Okay, so government borrowing, okay, in our current money system, is in fact a taxation. Okay. Now, one of the things to realize that um, it's it's impossible for the government to ever pay back the debt that this money that they owe. And the reason for that is when the banks, when they create the money, right? Let's step back now. You went to the bank, you put up your house, okay, and basically they gave you this money. Let's say they said your house is worth $100,000. They gave you $100,000, okay. Now here's the thing: in order for you to get your house back, or rather get the deed back or the title to your house, you also have to pay the bank back interest. Okay, so let's say you borrowed, $100,000. Okay, you basically, over 30 years, you basically gotta give them 200 or 300,000. Okay, so you gotta give them 2 to 3 times what you borrowed from them. So what happened is that when these institutions, when they create the money, right, based on the assets that you put up, they don't create the interest. Okay, so what that means is that there's not enough money out there for money to for all the debt to ever actually be paid back. Okay, now as long as this is done slowly and kind of across the board, you can kind of get by with it. It creates a situation where the money has value, right? Because if you think about it, why is money so valuable? Because there's never enough of it, and that's reality. That's actually how the way the system is designed, because the interest is never actually created. Okay, when the banks create the money, they never create enough interest. They never create interest to pay back all the money that's actually owed. They only create the principal amount. And in order for you to actually pay back everything, to pay back the principal plus the interest, it really depends on somebody else coming in after you and basically borrowing more money and creating more system and putting more money into the system. Okay, so basically our monetary system in a sense is a Ponzi scheme. It depends on more people continually coming into it, creating more money, so that the previous people will be in a position to pay back the principal plus the interest that they own. Because otherwise, if there was never more people coming into the system, the interest could never be paid back. All that they could mathematically pay back would be the principal, which is all the money that the bank ever created in the first place. Okay. And the system, would work fine. It would slowly grow. I mean, it's actually an ingenious system. That's my thought on it. It is actually an ingenious system. It is able to grow, with the population, in a sense. But when the government comes into this and they basically corrupt it by creating money without putting up actual assets. And basically diluting the buying power of your money, it's almost unrecoverable from it. And let me put things into perspective here. The government debt at this point, and I think it's somewhere upwards of 20 trillion. Let's talk for a second what $1 trillion is. Okay, if I tell you 1 million seconds, right? 1 million seconds, that's about 7 days. If I tell you 1 billion seconds, okay, that's 31 years. Okay, if I tell you 1 trillion seconds, okay, that's 31,000 years. Okay, so you can see, when you say $1 trillion, okay, that is not an actual number. That's not a real number. That's not a number that could possibly exist. That money was never created. That's a number in a computer that's just continuously compounding itself. Okay, so there's no way that the government could ever pay back this debt that they owe, because basically the interest is growing at such a rate that basically there's nobody that can come in that's on the same level as the government that can borrow enough money in order for the government to pay back that debt. Let's put this in no way. If you remember what I said earlier, it's a Ponzi scheme, right? if I borrow money, I'm only, if I borrow money from the bank, I put up my house collateral. The bank is creating the money to give to me, all right? I'm capable of paying them back the principal because that money physically exists because they created it to give to me. But the interest does not exist. So I'm depending on my neighbor to come in and also borrow some money, okay? And in doing so, he's going to basically I'm going to do business with my neighbor. I'm going to get some of his money, and that's how I'm going to pay back that interest, okay? So basically I'm depending on my neighbors who are basically on my level, right? Because I put up a house for collateral, my neighbor's putting up a house for collateral, his neighbor's putting, so basically we're all kind of on the same level, okay? When the government comes in and they're borrowing, trillions of dollars at a time, there's nobody out there that can come in on the government's level, okay? And basically, because basically in order for the government to pay back the money they own, somebody has to come in after the government to create money for the government to pay back that debt. So that's not going to happen unless like Martians or somebody else who comes from outer space that's on the same level as the government. It is impossible for the government to ever pay back that debt. So there's a couple of things for you guys to think about. If you have some questions, post them. I'll talk to you guys next time.